This is the Behind the Line podcast, coming to you from the crazy, chaotic lines of the Pacific Northwest. And this is Pacific Northwest Headline News. Well, Happy New Year. It's now 2023. I hope you had a fantastic Christmas and New Year's holiday, doing whatever it is that matters the most to you with whoever matters the most to you. I just want to say first off that the Pacific Northwest lost a major voice in the conservative news world. Dori Monson from Kiro Radio passed away on New Year's Eve. That is a guy that won't easily be replaced. He's the reason that I chose to do this podcast, or one of the main reasons I chose to do this podcast. Loved listening to his radio show and his take on everything. He always brought truth in what he reported. He always treated everyone with respect, regardless if he agreed with them or not. It's a big loss, and I hope Kiro holds that time slot of his and replaces him with somebody who can attempt to fill those shoes with the same type of reporting that Dori brought. Well, I'm sure you've heard about the 4 attacks on the 4 power substations in Pierce County, Washington. 2 men are now expected to appear in U.S. District Court in Tacoma Tuesday on charges related to attacks on the 4 power substations that left thousands without power, according to the U.S. Attorney's Office on Christmas morning. 4 power substations in Pierce County were vandalizing, impacting 14,000 households and businesses. On New Year's Eve, the FBI arrested 32-year-old Matthew Greenwood and 40-year-old Jeremy Crahan. The 4 substations that were targeted were the Graham and Elk Plains substations operated by Tacoma Power and the Kapowson and Hemlock substations operated by Puget Sound Energy. The damage to just the Tacoma Power substations was estimated to be at least $3 million. The FBI identified Greenwood and Crahan as suspects after analyzing their phone records. One of the Tacoma Power substations caught images of one of the suspects and a pickup truck that was tied to the 2 men. When law enforcement arrested Greenwood and Crahan, they found the same clothing caught on camera and seized 2 unregistered guns, one with a makeshift silencer. The 2 men were charged with conspiracy to damage energy facilities and possession of an unregistered firearm, according to the U.S. Attorney's Office. Conspiracy to attack energy facilities is punishable by up to 20 years in prison, and possession of an unregistered firearm is punishable by up to 10 years in prison. Prosecutors will ask that both men remain detained at the Federal Detention Center at SeaTac. Well, if anything, this just shows you how weak our energy system is. I think this, as preppers, this is something most people are aware of. I've read that of all the power stations in the U.S., if only a certain 9 of them are taken out, it would basically shut down the entire energy grid of the country. And if you look at these power stations, there's little to no security at these things, a chain link fence maybe. They're just out there in the open. And as far as I'm aware, the parts for these substations come from China, and many of the parts take months to make and then be shipped. So why this stuff isn't built in America and why Congress hasn't chosen to harden our energy grid, not just from stuff like this, but also from solar flares, EMPs, all this stuff. I think back in the late 80s or early 90s, somebody did a report they presented to Congress. It would have cost back then like $1 billion to harden the entire energy grid in the U.S. to protect it from EMP and solar flare, and yet they've chosen not to. But they spend billions and trillions of dollars on all kinds of other garbage instead of protecting and hardening our infrastructure, which is what is needed. Makes no sense. So it just is a reminder that you should be prepared for power outages for whatever reason. A lot of these people had no power on Christmas, which is pretty sad. And for what reason? I mean, what are you proving by doing this? If you have an issue with the government, which I'm assuming these two do, then take that issue to the government. Go protest or complain at the Capitol or to your representatives, but why you're doing things that affect people that have nothing to do with your beef is beyond me. That accomplishes nothing. Well, new year, new legislative session in Washington starting very soon, and hundreds of bills have been pre-filed for the 2023 Washington legislative session. This is just, this is some of these laws. State lawmakers in the House and Senate have proposed more than 200 bills. We definitely need more laws on the books, don't we, for the 2023 Washington legislative session, touching on a wide range of issues from education to healthcare and more. Some bills are in response to national issues, but mostly addresses issues within Washington. Notably, 2 bills for abortion. SJR 8202, Senate Joint Resolution, would protect and codify access to abortion and contraception by amending the Washington State Constitution. This comes at the request of Governor Inslee. SB 5098, the bill would prohibit abortion on the basis of Down syndrome. It would also want the Washington Medical Commission to revoke the license of any physician or healthcare worker who provides abortions to women carrying a fetus with Down syndrome. Can you imagine aborting your baby because it has Down syndrome? The people that do these things with such ill regard to life boggles my mind. In the law enforcement realm, 3 notables. SB 5086 addresses training for tribal police officers and employees, while SB 5108 seeks a regional training model for basic law enforcement training. Seems like we already have that with the Criminal Justice Training Center, but okay. HB 1025, the bill seeks to give victims of police violence more options to seek compensation. We definitely need more lawsuits. HB 1053 and 5034 and SB 5034 both seek to amend laws surrounding police pursuits by allowing officers to pursue based on reasonable suspicion. Oh, imagine letting cops do their jobs. Climate change. HB 1012, the Extreme Weather Protection Act, would create a grant program to help groups and federally recognized tribes during periods of extreme heat, extreme cold, and severe poor air quality due to wildfire smoke. This grant could be used for warming and cooling centers, transportation for people and pets during extreme weather, as well as provide emergency temporary housing and retrofit buildings to better prepare for climate change. There is a full list of the pre-filed bills that I will put a link to on my website, Behind the Line Podcast, under this post. My favorite bill that's been pre-filed is establishing the Suchosaurus rex as the official dinosaur of the state of Washington. This is by far my favorite bill. Anyway, like I said, there'll be a list on my website, behindthelinepodcast.com, under this podcast, that you can see an entire list of these wonderful new laws that are being proposed. Just the first of many to come this year, I'm sure. And here are some of the new laws that go into effect in 2023. As of January 1st in Washington State, with significant changes including a minimum wage increase, rideshare worker protections, and wage transparency on job postings. The Washington will have the highest state minimum wage in the country in 2023 when it increases nearly 9% to $15.74 an hour. The state's 2022 minimum wage was $14.49 an hour. That's an increase of $1.25. Still not enough to survive on. especially in this highly taxed state. According to LNI, the increase is directly linked to the cost of common goods such as housing, food, and medical care as reflected in the Consumer Price Index. State law passed by voters in 2016 directs LNI to calculate the minimum wage for the upcoming year based on the Federal Bureau of Labor Statistics, Consumer Price Index for urban wage earners, and clerical workers. The minimum wage applies to workers aged 16 and older. Under state law, 14 and 15-year-olds can be paid 85%, which will be $13.38 in 2023. Cities are allowed to set higher minimum wages. Seattle's minimum wage for large employers will increase from $17.27 to $18.69 an hour in 2023. Washington's wage will be even higher than California's, which is increasing to $15.50. Rideshare drivers will get new rights and protections as well after legislation that was passed in 2022. Drivers for services like Uber and Lyft will have the right to minimum trip pay, paid sick time, workers' compensation coverage, and protection from retaliation for exercising these rights. It's interesting to me that the state government is dictating to private businesses what they can pay, and these people are all, basically private business owners contracted by these companies. So why that they are eligible for all this stuff is absolutely beyond me. I owned a business with private contractors for many years, and this is just it's a killer is what it is for small business anyway. Maybe Uber and Lyft and that are all big enough to absorb this, but they don't have to pay this in other states, so I don't know. Overtime exempt salary threshold. LNI explains to be exempt from the State Minimum Wage Act, executive, administrative professional, or computer professional, and outside salespeople must earn at least the minimum salary. For employers with 50 or fewer employees, the 2023 salary threshold is 1.75 times the minimum wage, or $1,100 a week, $57,000 a year. For employers with 51 or more employees, the threshold is double the minimum wage, $1,259 a week, or $65,000 a year. Agricultural workers will need to work fewer hours to be eligible for overtime pay. In 2023, ag workers will need to work 48 hours before they can start earning overtime. In 2024, overtime eligibility begins when a worker reaches 40 hours in a week. This is just some of the many new laws that we are getting in the state of Washington. Well, in case you haven't heard, there's a new variant of COVID, an Omicron subvariant known as XBB.1.5. Yes, COVID is not going away. I think we're all aware that it's just going to keep mutating and we're not ever getting rid of it, but the news keeps on harping on this anyway. But so you're aware, right now this is spreading in the Northeast mostly. It accounts for almost 41% of confirmed COVID-19 cases nationwide, according to data from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. The XBB mutation has picked up concerning speed over the past week as it's jumped from just 21% on Christmas Eve. During the last week of December, XBB made up 75.3% of COVID cases in northeastern states. Those states include Connecticut, Maine, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, and Vermont. In New York and New Jersey, the strain showed up in 72.2 cases, also during the last week of the year. XBB has officially replaced the previously concerning BQ1 and BQ11 subvariants as the most common strains. Infectious disease experts are increasingly worried about highly contagious Omicron XBB variant, according to Reuters. Ironically, probably the worst variant that the world is facing right now is actually XBB. Dr. Michael Osterholm, an infectious disease expert at the University of Minnesota, told Reuters. So, same story, and of course now they're talking about masks again, and who knows what else this will lead to. They did say the only difference is the lack of significant increase in death rates in this XBB. So, it doesn't kill people. It makes you sick. Why are we trying to make this such a big deal? They also go on to say it's been driving cases in parts of Asia, including Singapore, as public health experts continue to show concern for rising COVID-19 cases in China. But, if there's a way that they can bring back their restrictions, they're going to do it. And they're just going to ride this COVID horse into the ground. Here's a disgusting story out of Port Orchard, Washington. And it makes me wonder what will happen to this kid. What sort of conviction and consequence will he get? Is he going to be let go? Is he going to get a few months? Or maybe nothing at all? Maybe just some community service or be put on parole? Teenager accused of raping and killing a 6-year-old East Bremerton neighbor, Janice Wright, pleaded not guilty in Kitsap County Superior Court Friday. Kitsap Sun said the pleas were entered after 17-year-old defendant Gabriel Gaetta's lawyers told the court he is competent to stand trial and that they will advise him to plead the fifth if forced to undergo a mental evaluation. 6-year-old Janice Wright was last seen August 2nd at her home in an East Bremerton mobile home park. Her parents called police August 3rd with reports of her disappearance, sparking a massive 5-day search until her body was found in a wooded area not far from the home. Court documents said she had been sexually assaulted and died from blunt force trauma to the head with possible strangulation. She was then buried in a mud bog. Gaeta, an Olympic high school student and wrestler who was due to begin his senior year, was arrested Saturday, August 9th at his home after investigators found forensic evidence that they said linked him to the crime. In court documents, the Kitsap County Sheriff's investigators said that when Gaeta was asked in a police interview if he was the only one involved in Janice Wright's death, he clearly nodded yes. He was charged with 2 counts of murder and 1 count of rape. Each charge of murder and rape also bring aggravating circumstances, including a crime against a vulnerable victim. If convicted, he could face life in prison. He's being held on $1 million bail in Kitsap County Jail. It's just sick. You cannot trust anybody. You cannot let your kids out of your sight. This guy should get the death penalty. But he better get life in prison. This better not be some typical Washington progressive liberal crapshoot where this guy gets a slap on the wrist and set back into society to do whatever he wants. I'm going to stay on top of this story because it's just... This is where we're at. And Oregon, like Washington, California, has problems with homeless people who are also repeatedly put back on the streets that shouldn't be. Crazy, out of their mind, drug addicted, freak homeless people who terrorize everybody, continually left to do whatever they want on the streets of the cities of the West Coast. A 32-year-old woman has been arraigned on assault charges after she did it, pushing a 3-year-old child onto train tracks at the Gateway Transit Center Max platform in northeast Portland, Oregon on Wednesday evening, according to the Multnomah County District Attorney. In security footage showing what she did, not allegedly, obtained by Oregon Live, Brianna Lace Workman can be seen launching herself from a bench to shove a child who was waiting for the train with her mother. The child did not make any contact with Workman prior to the incident, the officials said. The child landed face first onto the metal rail and rocks before being quickly rescued from the train tracks. Officials from the district attorney's office described in a press release. The child reported a severe headache and had a small red mark on their forehead after the incident. Oregon Live reported Workman is listed as a homeless person living in Portland per court records. On Thursday, the district attorney's office announced Workman was indicted with first-degree attempted assault, third-degree attempted assault, interfering with public transportation, second-degree disorderly conduct, and recklessly endangering another person. The officials also requested workmen remain in custody and be held without bail. Representatives for Multnomah County District Attorney did not immediately return request for comment. How many arrests do you suppose this lady has previously? How many things do you think she's done? Do you suppose she'll actually be held, or she'll be found mentally incompetent to stand trial or something? She'll be turned loose again. What is it going to take? What if the train had been coming and she pushed that kid in front of the train? Then what? When are these people going to be held accountable? When are we going to do something about it? These people need to be rounded up and put in a mental hospital or jail, whatever. Get them off the streets, away from people. When are the politicians and city officials going to be held liable and responsible for creating these conditions, for creating this environment, for allowing this to go on, for allowing these people to have the run of the streets, open drug use, garbage everywhere, tent encampments everywhere, crimes being committed all the time everywhere, because these people need to steal to support their drug habit and whatever else. All this crap going on that these politicians allow for whatever reason, and no regard to the rest of us that are just trying to get through our day, go to our jobs, live our lives, try to get through the day in peace, and then this kind of stuff happens. When is something going to be done about it? When are they going to be held responsible? They pass these laws, and then it's like they're just untouchable, and there's nothing. There's no liability or consequences anywhere along the line. That needs to change. These people need to be held accountable in some way, either sued or at the ballot box or whatever. Why do we keep voting for these people to be in office?
Here's more good news from Oregon, and the moral of this story is to stay away from the light rail train platforms. A suspect attacked a 78-year-old man on a light rail train platform in Portland suburb and chewed off the victim's ear and part of his face before police could intervene, authorities said Tuesday. The injuries to the unidentified victim from Hillsboro, Oregon were so severe that his skull was visible after the attack early Tuesday. Police arrested 25-year-old Corin Kramer, recently moved to Oregon from Georgia, police said. Authorities are investigating whether drug use may have prompted Kramer's behavior. You think? No case information has been listed for Kramer in Oregon's online court system, and he had yet to make a court appearance. Guarantee this guy is a homeless guy. And as I've been railing about these homeless people, just run around terrorizing people. Who knows what Portland or Gresham will do with this guy. It's just like Seattle, where these people are just churned back out to the street to continue terrorizing people. Insane. Good news for gun owners in Oregon. Oregon's Measure 114, which would have significantly tightened Oregon's gun laws, is blocked in its entirety after a decision Tuesday, January 3rd by Harney County Circuit Judge Robert Rashio. The law passed by voters on a razor-thin margin in November has been through several hearings, including 3 in Harney County. The latest on December 23rd kicked off with a reminder to all present, don't bring your guns into the courtroom. Case before the Harney County Circuit Court argued that the new voter-approved gun laws violate the state constitutional rights to bear arms. The hearing was to decide if a portion of ballot measure 114 requiring a completed background check for every firearm sale or transfer could go into effect even while other portions are temporarily blocked by the court. After taking more than a week to deliberate, Rashio ruled on January 3rd that the state cannot implement the additional background check requirement. The loophole is what allowed The new requirements, if implemented in the future, would close a gap in federal law known as the Charleston loophole, a provision in federal law that allows a firearms dealer to move ahead with the sale after 3 days, even if the background check is not yet completed. The loophole is what allowed a white man in Charleston, South Carolina, I'm not sure why that's significant, to buy a gun in 2015 before going on a racist killing spree, murdering 9 people at the historically black Mother Emanuel Church. This was in South Carolina, not Oregon. This is one event like this in how many years? 8. One person can cause this law to be changed. One crazy person. Your laws will not stop crazy people from doing crazy things. In arguments presented in court December 23rd, debate focused on specifics of the ballot measure's wording and whether or not its background check provision could legally be separated from the other 2 provisions of the law, an issue known as severability. The court declines to remove the background check provisions from the temporary restraining order as the provisions are intertwined with the permit to purchase program, and the court has made no final determination on the constitutionality of the program. The measure is a rule requiring a permit to buy a gun, also requires a completed background check for a transfer to take place. Firearms dealer has 48 hours to notify the state that a firearms transfer to the permit holder was completed. The permit to purchase program is on hold until the state creates the application and review process. Once complete, Ratio and a federal judge must approve the new system. Earlier this month, Ratio issued a preliminary injunction on the magazine ban, saying magazines are indistinguishable from firearms and essential to their protective power. He appeared convinced by arguments that 10-round magazines meeting Measure 114 strict requirements are exceedingly rare, and that without the ability to buy magazines, firearms become essentially useless. While the preamble of the ballot measure states it promotes public safety, the court finds it does not do so in any measurable way, Ratio wrote. We need more judges like this. The court finds that there is less than a 1 in 1 million chance of a person being a fatality in a mass shooting in Oregon, Ratio wrote, and even less with an offender who is using a large capacity magazine. Ratio's order means Measure 114 is blocked from taking effect in its entirety until he rules on the constitutionality of each individual provision after a full trial. Start date for that trial has not yet been scheduled. Good deal. We need to see somebody like this or something like this happen in Washington too, and California.
Well, we all see the writing on the wall with the economy, and what are you doing to protect yourself going forward? Silver and gold historically have always held their value. This is a good way to hedge your financial security in the future. You can go to Silver Gold Bull to buy gold, silver, platinum, and other products with over 286,000 5-star reviews. This is where I get my silver from. Silver is the most popular precious metal to invest in, as the cost per ounce is dramatically lower than other metals. Buying silver online is a smarter, more reliable way to diversify your financial portfolio. Additionally, investing in physical silver and gold are the only assets that are completely free of counterparty risk and have historically held their purchasing power. For more information or to purchase your silver or gold, you can visit my website, behindthelinepodcast.com, and follow the link to silvergoldbull.com. Protect your financial future today.
Well, you may not have seen the huge police pursuit in Southern California last week when a Riverside County deputy was killed by a felon and then subsequently killed in a shootout with police after the pursuit. And now the Riverside County Sheriff is speaking out, something I think we can all get behind. Riverside County Sheriff Chad Bianco is calling for the resignation of Kara Hudson, the judge, connected to the release of William McKay, the man accused of killing Bianco's deputy, 32-year-old Isaiah Cordero. This comes as the grieving sheriff blamed Cordero's death on what Bianco calls a failed justice system during Friday night's special report on Fox 11 News. In L.A., Bianco doubled down on his stance, calling for Hudson to step down from her post as a judge in San Bernardino County. She is proving that she has absolutely no business in the position that she is, Bianco said. Bianco blamed Hudson for allowing McKay back on the streets despite the fact that he had, as the sheriff puts it, an extensive violent past. Where have we heard this before? Every week in Seattle. This is going on all the time. Bianco said McKay was convicted of his third strike in November 2021. Despite the conviction, McKay was back on the streets. Oh, sounds familiar. He has proven over and over and over that he should be locked up, Bianco said of McKay during Friday's interview with the special report, and for Hudson to let him out repeatedly. And then this happened. You can't tell me that something this heinous is the first time she has done that. Prior to his interview with Fox 11, Marla Tellez, Bianco said in the past that Cordero's death could have been prevented had Hudson kept McKay behind bars. Now Bianco argues more of these incidents could happen if Hudson remains judge. There are many other suspects that are out there running free, victimizing the rest of us because she is not doing her job. She should quit, Bianco said Friday during his appearance on the special report. She's going to be in on that bench doing the same thing, protecting criminals for the next 6 years, unless we do something about it. Cordero was killed in a shooting during a traffic stop in Jerpa Valley Thursday. After the shooting, McKay led authorities on a police chase along the 15 freeway before it ended in a crash and then shootout between the suspect and the cops. McKay died after being hit by one of the bullets. He's absolutely right. These judges should not be allowed. They should be held accountable. There should be some accountability going all the way back to the politicians who pass these ridiculous laws giving criminals all these rights and letting them out on the streets. And judges who don't enforce convictions and don't enforce penalties on these criminals that are in the law books. I just read a story about and this is in New Mexico, but it goes along with this. We see this going on all over. In New Mexico, a guy, a juvenile, I believe, 17 or something, 18 maybe, 17 at the time of the crime, killed his 16-year-old girlfriend by shooting her in the face. And do you want to guess how much time this guy got for that crime? Which he wasn't even charged with murder for some reason. Some sort of assault and bodily harm thing. I don't know. But 90 days. 90 days for killing a 16-year-old girl. Where is the justice for the family? This guy's back on the streets. Who's he going to do this to next? Where is the justice for the community? Where is protection for the community? Why are these laws not being enforced? And why do they expect us to follow their laws for anything else if they are going to continually release these criminals over and over and over who have committed terrible crimes with no consequences? Then why should we pay any attention to the law either? Answer me that. These judges, prosecutors that don't do their jobs, and politicians who create the laws that have caused this state of world we live in currently should all be held accountable. You're going to have some people now come out and say, well, if the cop hadn't done this traffic stop in the first place, it wouldn't have happened, because they want cops to stop doing traffic stops. We have a group in Washington right now trying to pass or trying to get a issue on the ballot for November where cops will not be allowed to do traffic stops for certain violations. Why? Why are we limiting cops' ability to enforce laws that are on the books? Why do we have these laws if they're not going to be enforced? We need to stop tying the hands of law enforcement. If there's law enforcement members doing things they shouldn't do, then yes, they should be prosecuted and fired. But most cops do their jobs, and those jobs need to be done, and the public at large needs to be kept safe and needs to feel safe when they leave their home to walk around city streets. We shouldn't have to be terrorized by these freaks who should be behind bars.
And yet more problems for California. Federal regulators have ordered Union Pacific Railroad to make sure a livestock producer gets the grain it needs in California to prevent millions of chickens and hundreds of thousands of cattle from starving. The U.S. Surface Transportation Board told the railroad it must improve service to Foster Farms to keep it from running out of feed for livestock it raises. It's the second time in the past year regulators issued an emergency order related to delivery problems at Foster Farms, which is based in Livingston, California, as the railroad struggled with the shortage of crews. This time, however, Union Pacific blamed the weather for its problems, saying last month's extreme cold and blizzard conditions slowed deliveries in 20 of 23 western states the railroad operated in, and additional problems are possible because of the forecast for more severe winter weather. Union Pacific remains committed to serving all our customers as efficiently as possible, including Foster Farms, weather permitting. Foster Farms called on the STB to get Union Pacific to give priority to grain trains heading from the Midwest to the livestock producers' facilities in Traver, Turlock, and Delhi, California. Foster Farms attorney Thomas Wilcox said in a letter to regulators that the company has little faith that UP will deliver on its promises because the railroad has failed to deliver any of its grain trains on time in the past 2 weeks. So in the meantime, Foster Farms has been buying dozens of truckloads of expensive corn to keep its chickens alive while it waits for the grain trains to be delivered. But those truck deliveries can't continue to meet its needs. Union Pacific also cited staffing shortages as part of the problem for not being able to deliver on time. Regulators also recently criticized Union Pacific's practice of imposing limits on customer shipments as part of its effort to clear up congestion along the Omaha, Nebraska-based railroad's network of 32,400 miles of track across the western half of the United States. Won't it be great if we lose millions of chickens and hundreds of thousands of cattle in California? And I'm sure California hasn't done much to help this issue either, with its treatment of farms and lack of providing water to farms in the state of California. Not a good start to 2023. And California has some new laws being proposed and starting in this 2023. One of them, a COVID misinformation law that they claim is supported by California's medical establishment, makes it easier for the state medical board, which is actually made up of mostly not doctors, to push physicians who deliberately spread misinformation. Some doctors have already sued to stop the law, saying it violates their free speech rights. How about their right to practice medicine? How about their right to privacy, patient privacy, their right to do what's best for the patient, what their medical training has taught them, their years and years of medical training that politicians don't have? Ridiculous. Here's another great one. California Matters political reporter Alexei Koseff says the potential impact of a new law on racial bias in death sentences. California hasn't executed anyone since 2006, even though voters want to keep the death penalty. A 2019 moratorium imposed by Governor Gavin Newsom prevents executions. So it doesn't matter what the will of the people is in California, but I guess we already knew that. Advocates are also seeking to limit when capital punishment is applied. This law aims at the 674 inmates already on death row, giving them a way to challenge their death sentences as racially biased. A disproportionate number of the condemned inmates are black. Well, that doesn't change the fact that the crimes were committed. It doesn't really matter what color you are. If you committed a heinous crime enough to be convicted and sentenced to death, then, and that's the will of the people, then that should be upheld. But again, no justice. The will of the people is not upheld by politicians as it should be, and nobody is held accountable. And of course, Newsom's favorite topic, abortion. In large measure in response to the U.S. Supreme Court overturning Roe v. Wade, California lawmakers passed a slew of additional safeguards for abortion access, as well as putting a constitutional amendment on the November ballot, which voters overwhelmingly approved. A headliner among the new laws is one that shields women from prosecution if they end a pregnancy, even if it's self-induced or outside the medical system. The new law also ends the requirement that coroners investigate stillbirths. After 2 Kings County women were charged after testing positive for drugs. So it's okay to give yourself an abortion, murder your baby. It's okay to use drugs while you're pregnant and do God knows what to your baby. Does anybody else see the lunacy behind this, the lack of morality behind these laws? But what more could you expect from California?
Thank you for listening to the Behind the Line podcast. For more, visit behindthelinepodcast.com. You can also find us on netnewsnetwork.net, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Telegram, Gab, Parler, and Truth Social. Please like, share, and subscribe.